And now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Doherty. I'm the CEO of Stealing Share. We're a global rebranding and marketing company. We specialize in increasing market share. I'm also a member of Retail Wire's Brain Trust of retail experts. And today we're going to be talking about the retail marketplace and what it means to you personally in this business. What is the retail market landscape today? Why should it matter to you? What's important about it? What's changing about it? Well, it turns out that lots of things are. You know, I can tell you that I would bet every single day I'm asked to comment on Retail Wire about the battle between brick and mortar and online retailers. It seems to me that this is what occupies everyone's mind in retail, as if this is the fight. But I want to tell you that I believe that this is not the war, this is a diversion. The real problem that you have as retailers is different from this. And I'm going to talk to you about why that is and what those differences are. This is not about your front door and customers beating it down to get in and find your product versus customers buying things online. This is really and truly about meaning. What does your brand mean? It's really hard for us to come to grips with what this is all about, when in fact, we are all drinking our own Kool-Aid. But meaning is all that really matters. Whether it's online or brick and mortar doesn't. And the question to ask yourself when you think about brand meaning is, how sticky is it? And what we mean by that is, when you think about your brand, how difficult is it for someone to get that idea completely out of their head? Can it stay with them even when they're not in the process of shopping for the things that your retail business sells them? That's what we mean by stickiness. You know this yourself when you think about other low intensity categories, places where someone may use a product only on rare occasion, or maybe at a place where they don't think it's crucial to their own sense of self. And yet those people, the people selling those products, want you to remember the brand and provide some value to it, even when you're not in the process of using it. And that's what sticky really means. Retail, as it exists today, is totally lost. Now, I know when I talk to this group, you all certainly are aware of that. After all, you live with the bottom line of what retail does every day, and you know your sales are slumping. You know that there are fewer customers coming in the door than there were 5 years ago. You know that your margins are declining. But the issue here has to do with what we think we are really about. The argument I'm making about meaning is very different from the way in which you might define yourselves now, because retail as a whole thinks of itself in terms of being a process. They're process driven. We define ourselves by segmentation rather than emotional meaning. What this means is you think of yourselves and you say, okay, tell me what your brand is. And maybe you're a retailer who sells men's clothing. And you'll define yourselves that way. You'll say, well, we're a men's clothing retailer with high-end suits and dress clothes, or casual clothing. Or maybe you are, in fact, a general retailer who says that we sell things at discount. We're a discount retailer. That's really about your market segmentation. That's not emotional meaning. It doesn't carry any emotional load to it. It's the wrong answer to the right problem. Ask yourself, Who are you? What is your meaning? What does it look like? Now, to give you a little bit of inside scoop as to what we do here at Steal and Share, I'm going to share with you a typical landscape. Now, I know when you look to this group to the left, this is a mishmash of retail. You've got everything in here from men's clothing to outdoor furnishings, and we've got everything. And the reason why we've included this list is because on the phone right now with us are people from all different retail groups. So we place these, we start building what we call a landscape. And you'll notice that we have a matrix here that says at the very top, we've got category, and at the bottom is cost. I want you to think about this as category would be the descriptor of what it is that you sell. And cost would be your place upon the value line. For example, you might be a low cost provider, or you may be a high-end provider. And the reason why I want to show you this is because when you put everybody into it, it turns out that there is just no room to breathe. Now, we've got everything from pharmacies in here to men's clothing. And even with this, they're all crowded into this idea of what category is or the way in which they approach the market in terms of costs. There just doesn't provide any value to the consumer. Now, we could switch out these categories, and we could say, instead of category and cost, we could say department store, specialist. We could give this it doesn't matter how you lay it out. No matter how you do it within rational reasons, we end up with something that looks extremely crowded. No real room for differentiation and importance. But this isn't complete because obviously you compete on more than one front. So we add another axis. And this axis, for example, we're going to look at here, the difference between being a general store or a specialty store. And we place everybody in. They move a little bit based on that. When we talk about a generalist, for example, some of the major department stores would be that, and they would play on the low end or low cost provider all the way up to the high end. So that kind of makes a little bit of sense when you look at this. The problem is that these are all rational ideas, because that's what we think we are, even as a retailer. We talk about the idea of merchandising. We understand that there's an emotional context to that, but in fact, we think constantly and completely about ourselves in rational terms. We need to include the way in which people prefer into this model. And what I can tell you with absolute certainty is all purchase decisions, including, by the way, the venue upon which you wish to make those, meaning the actual travel to your own retail destination, is an emotional issue. All purchase decisions are emotional. What we do after we make that emotional connection is we rationalize it. We come up with a rational reason to support why we did what we do. But in coming up with brand meaning, to make ourselves different and important, we need to think about this in terms of an emotional connection. So let's add a brand axis to this. Let's talk about persuasion. And what I'm going to give you is a generic bullet point that talks about how you define everything. So what we've put in this is how we do it, which is what everybody talks about now. We're online, or we're a brick and mortar, or we're in a shopping mall, or we're in a strip mall. We have large stores, we have many departments, versus why we do it, why we do what we do. And what happens when you put in this emotional axis, is suddenly you find yourself in a dimensional environment where there is room to look and to understand and to see where opportunity exists and how you can make yourselves more important. So let's get rid of that box for just a minute and look at that market as a whole. We're going to push everyone behind the why we do it axes into the how we do it, because right now, everyone in retail is inside out. They're all talking about what they do, how they do it, not giving anyone the emotional reason why we do it. This is where you start to see that there's place to be playing, because why we do it is a reflection of your customer. It's about them. It provides stickiness because it's not about you, it reflects back on their lives. So when you think about it, what does why we do it really represent? Well, I want you to think in terms of not necessarily why it is all about this, but what it represents when you think about it from the perspective of the customer. Why we do it is an inverse reflection of who I am when I shop there. And that's real emotional brand meaning. This is where the rubber meets the road in terms of being important. Because all things being equal, and we live in a world, particularly one in retail, where all things are absolutely equal, this is the only differentiator. It's that emotional connection that you need that shopper to have when they choose your venue. We want them to be able to say to themselves, when I shop here, this is me. And the way in which you get to that place is not by talking about what you do, but why you do this. So think about it. Who am I when I shop there? From the perspective of the customer. This is where the essence of a persuasive brand that actually will grow and increase your market share is built. It's persuasive because it's not about you. It's about them, therefore it's sticky. It's something that stays with them beyond the absolute necessity of whatever it is that you're selling. There's a few rules, and I'm going to give you the no's. These are the things that they're not about when you're defining yourself to be persuasive. First of all, it's not about you. It's not about the retailer. It's not about your business. It's not about your segment, because it's not your market segmentation. That's not a clear enough definition of who your customer is or should be. It's not a category descriptor. So it's not as if you're in the large appliance marketplace or the sporting goods equipment marketplace. It's not a cliche. And boy, I'll tell you, this is a real problem when we're defining our brands, is we fall back into this mix of this one, the cliche, and the next one, which is no retail jargon. And we start to think about ourselves in terms of phraseology and ideas and meaning that really don't mean crap. Instead, they just roll off the tongue and they support the next problem, which is they can't be clever. Double entendre is a cliche. Retail jargon like beating the doors down is a cliche. So it can't be clever. It should not be a cliche. It should not be using any kind of jargon, but direct speaking. It should be spoken word directly to that target audience. And it's not about your process. So let's talk about how brands are really made then. So who am I when I shop there? Well, let's talk about human behavior just for a second, because it starts with belief systems. What we believe, and I'm going to be talking about this in terms of the perspective from the target audience that you're trying to influence. What we believe to be true creates the purposes or the needs and wants that we have in our lives. There's a direct relationship between the beliefs that you have and the things that you find that you need and want. So we have beliefs and we have purposes. And the purposes, while beliefs create purposes, purposes create process. And process is simply the means by which we do what we do and why we use what we use. I apologize for the fire truck in the background going by. This is the model for all human behavior. We're going to talk about it in more detail now. Let's start with beliefs. Beliefs are values. They're the self-reflection of the customer, always emotional. Remember, these are not rational ideas. These are the underpinnings of what the customer believes to be true in their lives, and it creates everything that they value, their sense of values in everything. And what's important to remember, by the way, is that beliefs don't have to be true to be powerful. They just need to be believed. If you believe them, it's not about a rational support that say, well, this is absolutely true or this isn't. Instead, it is a cornerstone of defining who you are. Beliefs, therefore, are predictors, and they are originators of behavior. That means that when you understand the belief systems of the people you want to influence, you can find ways to predict what that influence will be and how you can motivate them. It is what the prospect believes in, a self-fulfilling promise. That means that when they have a belief and you represent that belief to them, they find their way to give you credit for it. At the same way, it also kind of pushes them away from things that they don't find to be true. In this way, belief systems are magnetic. We are drawn to those things that reflect what it is we also believe, and we are repulsed from things that are the opposite of that. And that's because we seek the sense of justification, and all human beings try to avoid emotional conflicting messages. We're always in the process of honing the reactions that we have in the world to be in harmony with those things that we believe to be true. Make sense? So beliefs are the first part of where your brand resides. It's where your power is. Remember, beliefs create purposes, and these are the needs and wants of the customer. Oftentimes, good brands will talk in terms of purposes, what you need or what you want. Not great brands. Great brands are about the belief systems. But if I want you to think about this, every purpose that your customer or prospect has supports one of their principal beliefs. They're never in conflict with them. You don't have a purpose that doesn't serve a belief. They exist to reinforce those belief systems. They never happen in a vacuum, never, ever in a vacuum. Here's why they're difficult. They're inferred. That means they're not visible. Just like our belief systems are not visible, neither are needs and wants. They're inferred. We can see the results of them, but we can't see them ourselves. The power of a purpose, a need or want, is in direct relationship to the power or the principal sense of what a belief is. What that means is that the more powerful, the more central, we call it in our business here, a primary belief system. When we come up with a ruling precept, a ruling belief, we understand that that is the one in the life cycle of the human being that we wish to influence, that represents the greatest power. And therefore, the purposes that support that are also most powerful. You can't measure the power of a need or want unless you understand how principal the belief system is that created it. And of course, purposes create processes. Processes are very visible. They're easy to find. You know, these are the actions, the venues that the customer uses that you can see. They're always there, but they satisfy a need or want. The reason why we stick with them sometimes in terms of what we think is a persuasive message is just simple laziness. Because we can see them, we don't spend any time really evaluating them. We think that those are primary, but they have no power on their own at all. Processes are how they satisfy a need, not why it's important or what they believe to be true about that. They are not persuasive, not unless they are somehow tied to a need or want. And yet I can tell you, when you look around your marketplace, retailers define their position in terms of these processes. Process-driven. It's the worst that you possibly can be. So the war, right now, it's only a question of process. And I can tell you that that is an artificial argument. The idea of brick and mortar versus online is a lie. Because what it says is that the how, the process, whether I walk into a store or I buy it online, is somehow more important than the needs, wants, or beliefs that drive it. And that is an outside lie. The argument is artificial because it's not the why, it's the how. This has very important ramifications for the problems that everyone is finding themselves in retail. I see all the time experts supposedly in this field talking about the online presence of traditional brick and mortar retailers, and what everybody is whispering around the corner is Amazon. Oh my God, Amazon is involving in my business. They're taking away my business. I have to find a way to compete with them. Well, I got to tell you that Amazon is also not the solution. You are in a place that we define as strategists as flux. That means constant movement. Retail as a process can't survive by a processive definition. The idea of online is as transient as brick and mortar was or department store 40 years ago. Because how you deliver value is not a substitute for why. And I'm going to give you a warning right now. Amazon is right now in the process of redefining its position away from online. They're seeing a bigger picture, and you better be really frightened of that. Because when they do it, they're in your backyard. They've set up a jungle gym for your children. Amazon is redefining its position away from online. It's becoming a means to satisfy a need or want. They still haven't yet moved to the idea of precept or belief, but they're getting very close. Right now, the need and want that they satisfy is the need to comparison shop, and they're coupling that with same-day delivery, which means there is no trade-off between online shopping and brick and mortar shopping. The technologies have caught up. And that means that this is no longer a way to look at the market to draw the difference between the two. They have merged into a one. And you know what's really funny about this? It makes me smile a bit, is this redefinition, when it happens, every other retail market and every other retailer will be obsolete. You can't define yourself this way anymore. So the fact that a Macy's has an online presence is not a defense. They're going to find that their margins continue to decline and their market share continues to decline. It won't even save Walmart. And that's really the one that everybody looks at as a brick and mortar retailer who does the biggest job in moving forward with an online presence. Walmart will need to redefine its position and brand. They need to. They need to discover, as you do, the belief systems of your target market. And the only way to do this is with projectable blinded research. And so much of what happens in retail is really bad research. Email studies where you get people who are more apt to take the study. They have a bias built into it, come back. And what you end up with is the absolute opposite of what we would consider a standard bell curve. You're only getting people at the extremes who take the study. And that data, folks, is not projectable. It'll lead you down the garden path. You need to find your way to projectable research. What you want is something that gives you a 95% confidence with an acceptable margin of error. And you need to make sure you ask the right questions. It's not just what they do. You need to understand why they do it. And that requires using a different methodology than what you currently do. Open-ended questions don't give you a cue to that because most people don't know why they do what they do. What we're really looking at here is the ability to predict. Once you know what those belief systems are, cloak your brand in those values. Not in the process, but in the belief systems that drive it. Deliver that value, regardless of how it is delivered. We don't have any idea, as we don't today from 15 years ago, what 5 years from today will bring. The process of online shopping may completely change because processes change. Not only is retail in flux, process is in flux. And it's increasing, the rate of change is increasing forever and ever and ever. It's getting faster and faster. Processes change. Brand value is forever. It's forever because it's about the customer, not about you. That's the goal here. Get out of your own way. If you don't, you're going to get stepped on. No wonder doors are closing. It's time to rethink your value, because value is exactly what you need to move the market and make yourselves viable, not just again, but in the future as well. I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. If you want to contact me, That's my email address, tomd@stealingshare.com. I will be sending along a PDF of this presentation to those of you that were kind enough to give me 25 to 30 minutes of your time. I hope it was valuable for you. I know it was for me. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.